Okay, here we are again. We are back. Welcome, everybody. This is the We Quit Booze Brothers, which is a podcast where we try to have honest, no fluff conversations about our various experiences of quitting alcohol. And with me, as always, is my brother Matt. Hello, Matt.
Good morning, everyone. We are back again. Yeah, back with another topic, another interesting subject. Mark came up with this one. I think it's really, really good. So I'm going to let him introduce it. And then, as usual, we will discuss it in our own way. And hopefully, this is useful to all of you listening and watching out there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is it's a lot like a lot of these conversations. Some of the topics get a little bit intertwined. I think, you have a conversation about one topic, but they sort of overlap. And this is possibly one of those ones, but it's kind of a big one for me. It's something that I think about a lot, and it's something that I see a lot of evidence of having now stopped drinking. And it's the perception of what alcohol gives you versus the reality of what it actually gives you. And I've just got like two or three kind of points which I'll make, and then I'll hand over to you, Matt. But I think the big
Yeah.
one, the big obvious one, I think, is that sort of social element. The social confidence, it's what we do to have fun. The kind of yeah, if you want to let your hair down, if you want to have a big night, if you want to have a load of fun, that's best done with a load of alcohol. And it's interesting actually because I'm starting to sort of see a very slight, slow, gradual shift in kind of modern culture in terms of the way that it deals with alcohol. And we'll get to that in a minute. I was just reading in the paper yesterday that the company that own Moet, the champagne company, are just having a nightmare at the moment because there's just a massive decline globally in the sales of alcohol. Like everybody on planet Earth at the moment, I watch a lot of, Netflix type series and things like that. And I noticed in a few of them, there's more and more I see people stopping drinking as part of the storyline. I just watched one recently. It's brilliant, by the way. It's called Bad Sisters. It's on Apple. Really, really funny. Really, really dark. Really, really good. And one of the women in there has classically not a bit like a drinker like all of us. Really, she drinks quite a lot, but no more than most of people do. And without giving any of the plot line away, in one of the series, she quits. And what's weird about it is I remember saying to my wife, because it was between series one and series two, and I said, I bet that girl quits drinking in the second series, and she did. So bit of a diversion there. So there's
There
this
you
sort
go.
of like evolving dynamic around alcohol in the media and sort of its association with having fun. The other, just on the sort of flip side of that, is I'm watching a thing called Four Seasons, which is a Netflix show. It's quite good. It's got Steve Carell and Tina Fey in it. And they're the reverse. Like every time they go out and have a good time, let their hair down, they're just, doing shots of tequila and getting absolutely hammered. And I remember like when you see things like that on the TV and it all looks like great fun. And then they wake up the next day and they have this like pretend funny kind of hangover. But like 5 minutes later, they're out on kayaks and they all look like, the sort of the reality of the hangover experience as it gets portrayed in the media is just completely different to the reality. So, maybe there's just an example of the difference. But where I get to, a bit of a long-winded wind up to this point, is that I used to think that, the only way you can have fun is drink. Getting pissed, or, as we say in the UK, getting hammered. That's what you do when you get drunk. The reality, this is a conversation about the perception versus the reality. The reality is what you have is a false, weird, slightly chaotic, very disconnected experience. And I was thinking about this, and I remember when I used to drink and I'd go out and we'd have a night out and inevitably drink far too much. And I used to do this thing where I'd like wake up the next day and I'd quite often text the people that I'd been out with the night before to say, "Oh, great night last night, really good seeing you." And the reason I did it, or part of the reason was I think I was feeling uncomfortable about maybe some of the things I said, maybe some of the things I did. I felt a little out of control, felt that sort of slightly, was I a dick last night? Did I say something weird? Did they get upset about that? And the reality is that it's not fun. And I'm just going to give two quick examples, and then maybe I've got some other things I want to bring up, but maybe I'll just sort of hand over to you. I Now that I don't drink, I go out and I socialise and I have fun, and I can look back over the last 7 or 8 years, and there's been some fantastic times. I've had some great nights, one or two that really stand out. It was my wedding anniversary, or it's actually my wedding anniversary today, but last week
It is.
my wife and I went out for a dinner, and God, we had a nice time. It was a fucking nice night. It was magical. We were in Palma, which is in Mallorca, which is this lovely Mediterranean island. We had this lovely meal, and we just went for this really nice walk afterwards. It was just one of those lovely evenings where the light was right. We were in a good mood. We stopped for ice cream. We were recommended this, but it was just a lovely night. So there's no need to sort of, don't wake up the next morning and think, shit, did I say something bad? Or like, oh God, did I drink too much wine at dinner? All of that just sort of kind of goes away. And I just want to bring two examples up of since I have quit. I've got friends that drink a lot, and there's one that stands out as a mate. You know him. He's a really good, really, really close friend, and been on holiday with him, and he drinks quite a lot. And
Mm,
we'll have these conversations, and I can tell he's drunk, and I can tell he's sort of having drunk conversations with me,
mm,
and it feels awkward for me. It feels like you're not really being you. I'm not really. You're just, and I have to sort of go along with it. And then what happens is a couple of nights later, we'll have another conversation, and he'll get really, really drunk again, and he'll ask me the same questions that he asked me 2 nights ago, and it makes me feel. I feel a bit hurt. I feel like you're not really interested in me. You're just interested in getting hammered. You're just interested in you and you being drunk and you having conversations. We talked about this thing where when I was drinking, I watched The Sopranos and I watched The Wire and I watched Peaky Blinders. These are shows that I've watched again since I got sober. Can't remember any of it. I'd watch episodes and I'd be like, I can't remember this. And like my wife, but yeah, you've seen this one. Can't remember it. And I'm going to bring you up, mate. I remember when you used to drink, and you're quite a quiet, generally sort of quiet. I think we've both admitted on these calls that we're actually fairly introverted.
mm.
When you used to drink, you'd suddenly just like come alive, and obviously we didn't realize at the time that there was more sort of going on and more to it. But it what I'm trying to say here is that the person you think you are, the fun that you think you're having, it comes with disconnection, it comes with chaos, it brings anxiety, it brings a shit show, and it's so much more connected and so much better. All of these myths exist and they're just not fucking true. And I don't know how or what we can do to sort of stop people thinking that that's what you need to do to have a good time, but it's really, really not.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I, once again, what I love about these calls, these chats, is that I have something in my mind when we start, and now I'm thinking of something else, and we never know where it's going to go. So I wanted to start off, I guess, actually with something I saw this week. So there's a woman called Muriel Robin, Muriel Robin in French. She's very famous over here in France. She's been around since the 80s, I think, or the 90s, and she's kind of a household name. And she has done a huge amount of TV. She's a comedian. It's mainly comic stuff that she does. She's probably like a Jennifer Saunders, if you know her from the UK, equivalent over here. And she went on the news last night, or not last night, sorry, 2 nights ago, on BFM, which is the equivalent of sort of BBC, I guess, over here, and said that she had had problems with alcohol, said that she was an alcoholic. And it was a big thing. It was really, really, really interesting. And, not only was it great to see someone of that stature and someone who's really respected to go on TV and say that. I think she's like 61 now. But also, some of the questions that were asked were quite interesting because of the way she answered them. So you know, their first question immediately was, oh, was it because you were, you're such a star? Was it the pressure? Was it the, going on stage? Did you get caught up in the razzle dazzle of it all? And she went, no, absolutely not. There was nothing to do with that. She went, I think I had some trauma in my childhood, and I think, alcohol for me became a crux, and I used it. But she said, I don't see myself any different to anybody else who has a problem with this. She said, I was drinking a litre of champagne every night, but that's because I could afford it. Otherwise, I would have drunk a litre of the cheapest wine I could possibly get my hands on. And she said I was a real grey area drinker. I never woke up wanting to drink, but every day I would get that ding, ding, ding in my head. It's time. What time is it now? And she was quite funny with it, as you can imagine. I'm not going to in any way pretend to recreate it, but because she is a comedian, but it was just wonderful to see. And it was just everything I think we've spoken about on these podcasts coming, it was all the sort of classic stuff of when she stops, people going, oh, how long are you stopping for? When are you going to stop this nonsense and have a drink again? And she talked about coming alive. She talked about, when she drank, she became this persona, she became this different person. She actually realized that it wasn't even the person she was trying to be on stage, because most of the time on stage she wasn't drunk or anything, and she just said no. And the biggest thing she said at the end was, it was, and we've said this so many times, it was a return to self. She found herself again. She was like, this is actually who I am. And now that trauma I had, well, I can deal with that in my own way and with the help that I need. And it was, anyway, it was just really, really fascinating. I just wanted to share that. But talking about the actual subject, so perception versus reality of drinking, I kind of thought about it in two ways, really, which is one is like the social perception, which you've talked about, that social lubricant. And it was a big thing for me. I am an introvert, I'm quiet, going and talking to people I don't know and things like that. And I think with peer pressure, and I never believed there was peer pressure. I never believed that. But actually, when you look at it, when everyone is in a movement, when it's Friday night and you're going out and everyone else is having a drink, you'd get caught up in it. And some people, go further than others, and there is a desire to fit in as well. I think, I smoked, I drank, I think everybody wants to be of a certain status, and you get involved with that crew, and you do the things. But as we know, some of us we're all programmed differently, and then you can move on to the different phases, unfortunately, which can end in addiction. The other thing that we haven't talked about, which I thought about as well, is this sort of status symbol of drinking, which is one I absolutely despise. And you know please, 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 anybody posting pictures of bottles of wine on the internet, going, oh, wonderful Chateau Margaux or something, you what I call the connoisseur bellend. You're the person who has this, it's just a glass of wine at the end of the day. You're drinking ethanol, you are swilling a very expensive liquid that will be forgotten, that will give you a hangover, that makes you feel whatever. I know it's enjoyable, I get that, I used to enjoy it, but this sort of status symbol, this idea that you can be sophisticated, wealthy. And I think I fell into that trap at some point. We'd go to restaurants, you'd order that expensive bottle of wine, you'd talk to people about, oh yeah, I had this wonderful, amazing Sancerre the other day, and you fall into that sort of bullshit. That's what being successful looks like, is drinking that good, or going into those expensive bars and ordering the expensive cocktails. So I think that's it's important to think about. And then probably something that I'm going to say what the title of it is, and then probably hand back to you. So what's funny is you get these social perceptions, and we've all kind of been there. So the acceptability, the stress relief as well, some people go down that path. And then you look at the health perceptions, so perception versus reality. the perception of, oh, it's probably not too bad for me, or oh, a glass of red wine a day is okay. And then you look at the reality, and the reality we all know is, addiction, it's liver disease, it's heart attacks, it's cancer, it's and the big one, I think, that the elephant in the room that everyone ignores, is mental health issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll hand back to you and let you digest that
Yeah.
maybe and see what
Yeah.
you think.
That's the huge one always for me. And again, it's important to say, we're not trying to. If you are a one or two glasses of wine, help, just takes the edge off, and that's it, and it's never any more. We've both got wives who fall into that category.
Yeah,
Then that's not who we're talking about
this
here.
isn't for you.
This isn't
This
for
is
you.
not for you.
That's fine. What this is drinkers like us who, my thing was, what's the thing you say something about one is never enough and not, I
Yeah.
can't remember, something like, but
uh I think it's one is too many and 10 is not enough or something like that, or
something
the other way
like that.
around. I can't believe I can't remember it because normally I
Yeah, this sort of the point is that when I had one, I would more as likely have 10. I couldn't stop, and
Mm,
there were I think there were probably three reasons why I drank. And obviously there's that great line in Train Spotting where he's talking about heroin addiction. He said, we're not fucking idiots. We do it because it's absolutely fucking brilliant. It makes you feel amazing.
mm,
There was that sort of, you feel there's a sort of a euphoric sense. There's the sort of dopamine crack, release that you get, which of course counterintuitively is the thing that also makes you feel terrible the next day. So you know so I drank for sort of a few reasons, but I think there are three main reasons. One is I always felt like it was my good time. I felt like having a drink was the thing that was going to give me a good time. Now that I've stopped, what I realize is that it was actually just chaos. It wasn't me. I felt very lonely. I felt like I'd created an avatar version of myself, and now I feel like I've got. Yeah, the other thing as well when you drink is you narrow your window of fun. You condense it down to that period when you're drinking. The rest is, it just feels like a bit of a bind. Let's just chew through
mm.
the days. Let's chew through. Whereas when you stop drinking, this window just kind of, you get this boundless. Every day, every minute, every time is there are opportunities for you to find enjoyment. So that's the first one. The other one was kind of relaxation, and the third one was just that pressing pause on the world, the de-stress, the
Mm.
sort of just when I drink, I don't think about all the shit that I normally think about. It's a pause. And that's the biggest lie on planet booze, because yes, you get a temporary suspension. It
Yeah,
messes with your this thing called GABA, which is your body's natural hormone for managing stress and calmness, etc. It sort of superficially triggers that, which then has this rebound effect. So I used to think that it helps me relax. I used to think that it would help me to sort of deal with stress. I used to think that it would help me get better sleep. And none of those things could be actually further from the truth. It gives you a temporary reprieve, but then what you end up doing, of course, is you pay it back with interest, with compounded interest, and then some. So I think that is one of the biggest lies that we've grown up with, that,
yeah,
you can take the edge off with booze, you can make yourself better. And my mental health it's taken me a while. But I can honestly say that 7 or 8 years in, I don't think it really gets much better than this. I think, living on planet Earth and dealing with all the shit that you have to deal with is going to be, there's demands on your mental health, but by not drinking and by having a sense of strength and inner kind of calm, you're much better placed to deal with it.
yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I think you uh, the other thing as well for me is that we kind of grew up with this, and I think. So the one thing I wanted to move on to, sorry, we jump around in these. I know that, but for me, it was just like, this is what you do as an adult. And it was just like, there was never, for a long time, there was never any question that I wouldn't not drink. There was never, it was just, this is when you go on holiday, you drink, you can drink more when the minute Friday comes around, at the beginning, then it moved to Wednesdays, and then it would be any night of the week. And it was just, this is what adults do. They drink wine, and that perception needs to change. And I think the good thing is it is changing. There is a social media movement out there. There is a very, the youth, young people. I notice it. I notice that there are a lot of people that don't drink. I went out to a picnic on Friday, sorry, with work, and it was great. We got super lucky with the weather. We went to a place called Saint-Germain. So if you know football, Paris Saint-Germain, that's where they get the name from. It's a town outside of Paris, and that's where they were created, and they used to train. They no longer do. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. It has this chateau with these gardens, stunning. And we had the picnic there. Wonderful, very, very lucky. And there was a lot of alcohol available for those who wanted to drink it. But there was quite a few people not drinking it, and it wasn't because they were driving. It was because they don't drink, or they just had one glass. And I was quite surprised about that. Back in my day, I think in the 90s, the 2000s, when it was my heyday, especially in Britain, people would have been tucking in. It would have been about the booze. It would have been getting there, having a drink, free drink, let's attack it. Or at least that was my perception, and then maybe because the people who didn't drink, I just ignored them or thought they were boring. But I think anyway, what I'm trying to say is I think there really is a movement. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think for all people listening, if you stop drinking, if you're questioning your drinking, there couldn't be a better time to do that, because things have got easier. I think people question less. When you go out and you say you don't drink, I don't think to be honest, the people you get the pressure from are the people of your peer group, your generation. I think young people now, they don't even question it,
No, no, I agree.
um,
Yeah.
and that's a great thing. That's a great thing. So I think, the perceptions are there, whether it be, health, cultural, individual perceptions compared to the reality. But for me, um, the reality of it is that it it's a drug that just leads to misuse, because of the whole ecosystem around it, that bravado around it, that status symbol around it, that cultural aspect around it. It's there to be misused, and,
Yeah.
and misuse I did.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. I think just two things. One is maybe we should do a podcast on is the world about to quit drinking? Because I think I've got lots of thoughts on kind of the way things are shifting. But I think
That's
just
a good one. Let's do that.
yeah, we will. I think to summarize then, the myths, the perceptions, and the realities are you think it helps you to relax. The opposite is true. It creates heightened anxiety, triggers cortisol, all sorts of stress hormones are heightened and released. So that's a myth. You think it gives you more social skills and leads to a better time socially. What it actually leads to is a pretend version of yourself, an avatar version, a disconnected, insincere relationships, and a very, very narrow window of fun and happiness. You think it helps you to manage stress. The complete opposite is actually true. It makes, trust me, as a man who has woken up on those Monday mornings, chest hammering, sweat down the temples, terrified of the day and the week that lies
Mm.
ahead as a result of a weekend of heavy excess, compared to now when I wake up early, just ready to go. That just could not be a bigger lie. So there's a summary of some of the myths and the realities, and where we should leave it there, because I think we've been going on for a while now. So yeah, there's always so much more to say, but I'm going to stop. So
Yep.
unless there's anything else from you, Matt, I'll leave it there, and we'll
No,
maybe
I
continue.
think it's good, and I think let's fit that topic into our agenda. That is the world about to stop drinking. I think that's a really really interesting one. Love
All
it.
right.
Yeah. So yeah,
So we'll
good for
leave it
me.
there. Thanks, everybody. I felt like we meandered through that one a little bit. If you've got to this point, well done, you. We really appreciate it. Look, this we've been doing this a long time now. This seems to
Yeah,
really, really help. So it helps Matt and I.
it
Hopefully,
does.
it helps you too. We're really delighted that you're part of this community. I think it's a good gang of people. We get some really lovely comments, and that just there's really honestly there's nothing better than hearing stories of your stories make all of this. I guess your stories are sort of the fuel that kind of keeps this thing running. So, keep those coming. Try and recommend, subscribe, do all the things that will help us to grow the channel. And as always, I'll say never quit quitting. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him. Bye for now.
Bye all.